What's up guys and welcome back to the channel, and in today's video we're here with a mega tier list because I am going to be ranking every single fighter in the Bantamweight division of the UFC on a tier list. And there's like 78 or like 80 bantamweight fighters in the UFC right now. And I didn't cut any corners. I didn't do, I'm just going to rank the top 15 or top 20 or top 30. No, I'm ranking every single fucking fighter that's signed to the UFC in the bantamweight division. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the effort I'm putting into this video as such, because I'm going to be talking about like 75 different people. I'm not going to really discuss them for that long. I'll probably just place them in the tier list and like tell you who they are if you don't know and move on. But yeah, this is not going to be like strictly ordered. So if someone's like, oh, why is this number 30 ranked bantamweight 2 spots ahead of the number 26 bantamweight? Like, it's not that like set of an order. It's very vague. I'm probably going to change this up a bunch in the list or a bunch as we go throughout. But yeah, let's get started. First up, we got Sean O'Malley. He's going in the elite tier. Obviously, pretty clearly, he's the champion of the world fighting this weekend for the belt. Already got one title defense. Pretty self-explanatory. Sean O'Malley is an elite bantamweight. Let's move on, though, to the next fighter. Going to the other end of the spectrum, we've got Giannis Gamori, who is quite literally a bum. He's a terrible fighter. I said, wow, this guy's terrible. Giannis Gamori is fucking atrocious at fighting. So yeah, he's going in the bottom tier. Yet to win a UFC fight, I think. Maybe he has, but I think he's lost his last 2, and he got KO'd in like 10 seconds in his last fight. So yeah, Giannis Gamori, certified bum. Let's move on, though, to the next fighter. Next up, back to the top tier, we've got Merab Dvalishvili, the other fighter in the main event this weekend. Also an elite fighter. While skill-wise, technique-wise, he might not look as elite. I can't put anyone who has a win over Peter Yan and Jose Aldo and Henry Cejudo. I can't put them below elite. So yeah, Merab might not look the best to watch, but he's definitely one of the elite fighters at 135. Let's move on to another fighter. Back down to the bottom tier, Charalampos Grigorio is a bum. He lost his last fight to Kazama. He lost his fight before that to Chad Anheliga, who, spoiler, are both going to be very fucking low on this list too, because neither of them are good. But yeah, Charalampos Grigorio, the representer of Cyprus in the UFC, and he's unfortunately representing them pretty badly because he's yet to get a win and he's shit. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Next up, Davison Figueiredo. I'm going to put him in very high level now. I'm probably going to move him up later on because we're going to need to fit all these people in, and I think it's going to average out to like 11 people per tier. So Figueiredo is definitely a top 11 bantamweight. So I'm going to move him, but for now, I'll just put him in very high level because he is very high level. And if I was ranking this like just the top 20 and I was doing this in comparison, yeah, he's probably like the second tier. But a lot of these guys who you wouldn't normally have in like the top tier of bantamweight, I'm doing, or like, because you're thinking about it as if it's like the whole, you're thinking about it if it's just top 15, but I'm doing the entire division. So in comparison, there's going to be some guys where you're like, oh, they're not elite, but like they're elite in comparison. So yeah, Figueiredo, I'll put him here for now, but I'm probably going to move him up later on in the video. Let's move on, though, to the next fighter. Next up, we got Raoni Barcelos. I'll put him as a decent fighter. He's a decent fighter. He gets wins, he gets losses. Maybe I should move him up, but I don't know, just for now. Seems like a pretty good spot to have him. He's pretty mid. So yeah, I'll put him in the decent tier. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Next up on the tier list, we've got Jesse Butler. He's a bum. Certified bum. Lost to Brad Katona. Got KO'd by he got KO'd by Jim Miller at lightweight and then cut down to bantamweight and lost to Katona. He's fucking shit. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Next up on the tier list, we've got Garrett Armfield. I'm going to put him in decent as well. He lost his most recent fight. I think Garrett Armfield's pretty solid. I think he's better than Raoni Barcelos, but again, this is not like, I'm not ordering these guys. I can't be fucked. So yeah, I'm going to say that Armfield is a decent fighter in the UFC. Let's move on, though, to the next fighter. Next up, we've got Beksat Almakhan. I'm going to put him in good fighter. You know, we've only seen him lose to Umar, but he dropped Umar in round 1, which in hindsight is a pretty good look because Sandhagen didn't really hurt Umar at all on the feet. And he was the first guy to make Umar look in trouble in a fight, really. So yeah, Beksat, haven't seen him much, but I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. He seems like a pretty good fighter. He only had 1 loss on his record before the Umar fight. So yeah, he does seem like a pretty solid guy in the bantamweight division. So yeah, I'll put him in good fighter. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Next up, we've got Davy Grant. I'm also going to put him in good fighter. He's been around for ages. He's got some wins over high-level guys, like he beat Martinez, but recently he's kind of dropped off a little bit. He had a close fight with Daniel Marcos, But Davy Grant, I don't know, he's alright, he's pretty mid. Let's move on though to another fighter. Next up on the tier list, Victor Hugo. I'm also going to put him in a good fighter. You know, he won his, I think it was his debut recently-ish against Pedro Falcao, who was stepping in on short notice. I think he might have another fight in the UFC, maybe he doesn't, I'm not sure. But he seems alright, he seems like a solid, decent level fighter. Let's move on though to the next guy. Next up, we've got Vinicius Salvador. Now this guy sucks. He's awful. He's terrible. He got KO'd by Yanez in his last fight. He's a victim. He gets KO'd by everyone. I think he was a flyweight. He was a flyweight fighter that has basically lost to everyone, and then he went up to Bantamweight and lost to Yanez. So yeah, awful fighter. Let's move on though to another guy. Next up on the tier list, we've got Taylor Lapulus. I'm going to put him in high level. I think he's a step above like Bexat and Davy Grant and Victor Hugo. I think Taylor Lapulus is a very good fighter. He only has a recent loss to, I think it's Farid Basharat, who is very good, but he looked really good in his last fight against Cody Stamann. He's a French fighter. He's got that sort of range kickboxing style. I think he's very good. Let's move on though to another fighter. Next up, we've got Farid Basharat. I just went back to back with these two because I think they are on a very similar level. I think Farid Basharat is probably just one little step ahead, but stylistically, I think he's just a bit better of a matchup to beat Lapulus. But overall, I think Lapulus is a better striker. Basharat's just really good at sniffing crotches. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Next up, we've got Chito Vera. I'm going to put him in high level because I don't rate Chito that highly. So I know high level is like, oh, you're saying he's good. Again, in comparison, I think he's around the level of a Taylor Lapulus. So if he fought Taylor Lapulus, I feel like that would be a competitive fight. Maybe I'm just delusional. I just don't rate Chito that highly. I don't think he's very good. Maybe it's just because he looks awful in his fights until he gets random knockdowns and shit. Maybe, I'm not sure. But yeah, I don't think he's that good, to be honest. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Next up, Brian Kelleher. He's a bad fighter. He's not good. Quite frankly, I might move him down, honestly, later on. But yeah, right now, Brian Kelleher, he's a pretty shit fighter, to be honest. He lost to Cody Gibson. Not a great look. Lost to Garbrandt as well. Not a great look. So yeah. I don't think Kelleher's very good. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Next up, Gaston Bolaños. This guy lost to Marcus McGee. I don't know what else he's done. Maybe he's had other fights in the UFC I forgot about, but I know he got KO'd by Marcus McGee, which isn't a bad look. I think Marcus McGee's pretty solid, but I don't know. I just don't rate Gaston Bolaños too highly. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Next up on the tier list, we've got Kyler Phillips. I think he's very high level. I rate his performance against Munoz very highly. He just fought Rob Font. Oh, no, sorry. He's booked to fight Rob Font recently, I should say. I think he's going to win that fight. I think he's going to do it pretty impressively. I think he's very good. I think he's just a slightly less skilled version of Sean O'Malley. But this dude's fought Song Yadong. Like, he's fought some good level opposition. And he just schooled Munoz recently too, so he looked solid after coming back from a while off. He did pop, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, maybe that's why, but I don't know. Kyler Phillips is solid. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Next up, we've got Kung Ho Kang. He's alright. He's decent. He's got some wins. He's got some losses. I think recently he lost to Muin Gafarov. It was a close fight, so I'll put Muin Gafarov slightly ahead of him, I think, when I do it eventually rank him on the tier list. But Kyung Ho Kang, he's decent. I think he lost to Castaneda. I think he beat Quinones, though, so he's got some wins. He's alright. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Next up, we got Montel Jackson. Montel Jackson, I think, is very good. He just smoked Damon Blackshear, who I rate very highly. Damon Blackshear, in my opinion, got robbed against Mario Bautista. So I rate Montel Jackson's win over Damon Blackshear very highly. I think he's very good. I think he's got a couple bad losses, but when he's on, I think he's fucking real good and he can beat a lot of guys. So yeah, I think Montel Jackson, pretty high level for the bantamweight division. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Next up, we got Jose Aldo, obviously very high level fighter. Also, just a heads up, I think I just moved Lapulus a little bit behind. I rearranged them. I know I said it's not all going to be on ranking, but for some of them, I'm doing, like, I do the tier list thing, and then I record it afterwards. So, yeah, like, I've already set out the tier list. As I'm recording this, I already know what my ending outcome's going to be, but, like, my thought process was like, yeah, I'll change that. But yeah, Jose Aldo, very high level. Probably, again, I'm going to move him to elite later on, but for now, very high level. But yeah, in comparison to the rest of the bantamweights, he's clearly top 5, top 10. So yeah, very good fighter, Jose Aldo. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Next up on the tier list, we've got Toshiomi Kazama. I'm going to put him in bad fighter. Look, he did get a win recently, so fair enough. But I still don't rate him very highly. He got nuked by fucking Rinya Nakamura immediately. He got finished by Garrett Armfield. So the fact that he did beat Charalampos Gregorio just shows how bad Gregorio is, because Kazama's not good either. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Next up on the tier list, we've got this guy, Pedro Falcao. He came in on short notice and fought Victor Hugo. He looked okay, kind of just got outclassed a bit. So I'll put him in bad fighter, but if we see more from him, maybe he's not too bad, but I don't know, he's really not got... None of you guys probably fucking know who this guy is. So, like, that says enough. I can't really rate him highly, but I'm not going to put him... I'm not going to put him in a bum tier, in the bum tier, because he's just not terrible, but, like, he's not good. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. What's up, Daniel Marcos? I rate Marcos very highly. I think he's extremely high level. Well, not extremely, but I think he's high level for sure. I think he's around that level of Chito Vera. Like, if him and Chito fought, I don't know. I feel like he could win that. In a 3-rounder, maybe he gets it done by split decision. Like, I don't know. But Marcos looked real good in his last fight against Castaneda. Put it on him. He got hurt right at the end of the fight, so they're not amazing of a look. But yeah, he's got great boxing. He's undefeated as well. So yeah, Daniel Marcos is a very solid fighter, in my opinion. Let's move on, though, to the next guy. Next up on the tier list, Peter Yan, elite. No need to explain, really. He's beat a lot of good guys. He hasn't really lost to anyone bad. Only lost to O'Malley on paper, Aljo, and then Marab was the only bad loss that he had, really. So yeah, Yan is definitely the elite of the elite at bantamweight. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Next up on the tier list, we've got Muin Gafarov. I'll put him at the top of decent fighter. He beat Kyung Ho Kang, so I got to put him above him. Yeah, I don't know, he's alright. But before that, like, Saeed lost, and who did the other lose to? Someone else. He lost to Saeed Nurmagomedov and John Castaneda, and then he beat Kyung Ho Kang. So yeah, fair enough. Let's move on, though, to the next fighter. Next up on the tier list, Saeed Nurmagomedov. I think he's very high level. Saeed's pretty solid. Close fight with Martinez, arguable robbery. Saeed's always kind of just been around. He's always like the less of the good Dagestanis, but he's still up there. Everyone still respects him as a great fighter. Let's move on to another guy. Next up, I don't know why I'm doing this. I'm going to move down Chito Vera just for now. And I'm also going to put Rob Font in the good fighter tier with Chito, because I was going to keep him... I wanted to put Font higher, but then I was like, oh, Font lost to Chito, so maybe I'll just do that later. Again, I'll switch it up as we go on in the video. But yeah, Rob Font and Chito Vera, I think, are on a pretty similar level. I think Font's a more technical fighter. But yeah, I'd say Rob Font qualifies as a good fighter right now at this stage of his career. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Next up, Chad Anheliga. He beat, what's his name? He beat Gregorio, which we've established is not a good win. Yeah, I don't know, Chad Anheliga, he's not very good. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Next up on the tier list, Umar Nurmagomedov, obviously elite of the elite at bantamweight, just coming off a very dominant win over Corey Sandhagen. You got to give him the respect and put him up the top tier. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. So we got Quang Lee, who just fought Chris Gutierrez pretty recently and had a decent showing for himself. He looked okay. I'm not going to give him that, and that was short notice as well. Look, he lost, I think, 2 rounds to 1, but he looked okay in the third. He had a decent performance. So yeah, good job to Quang Lee. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Next up, Rinya Nakamura. I'm going to put him in high level. Now, people are going to hate that I have him over Chito and Rob Font, so I'm probably going to adjust this as the video goes on. But Rinya Nakamura, I rate his wrestling very highly. I think he could arguably beat Chito Vera through wrestling. I think if he took down Chito and approached the fight wrestling first, who's to say he doesn't just take him down and hold him there for 2 rounds? So yeah, Rinya Nakamura, I rate his grappling very highly. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Next up on the tier list, we've got Angel Pacheco. That is this guy's name. If you don't know who he is, fair enough. He lost his debut to Callan Loughran, who in hindsight isn't very good because he just lost to Jake Hadley. Angel Pacheco is a guy that just had a kind of tough fight on the Contender Series. He lost to Danny Silva, who's now at featherweight. Angel Pacheco basically got a sympathy contract for being a tough guy. And again, he goes out there and fights Callan Loughran, and all he really had was being a tough guy. He's not good in any way. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Next up on the tier list, Cody Gibson. Cody Gibson is decent. He's decent. Look, I don't think he's very good, but he's better in comparison to the guys below him, so I will put him in the decent fighter tier. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Next up on the tier list, we got Henry... Guys, listen, guys, I promise you I'm elite, guys. Cejudo, right now I'm going to put him in the very high level tier. I think if he fought a guy like Kyler Phillips right now, I think he would lose. Maybe he could get takedowns, but like if he fought a Montel Jackson right now, I don't know, I feel like it's kind of a competitive fight. Henry Cejudo at this stage in his career, even though he's only lost to Aljo and Marab, so it is kind of tough. I just don't think he looks that good at this stage in his career. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Next up on the tier list, Douglas Silva de Andrade is bad. I don't know. I hated his last performance. Maybe he's not too bad because he's got some half-decent wins, but he looked fucking awful in his last fight. I know he's pretty old, so I'll give him a pass, but I just can't rate him that highly. I don't think he's very good. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Next up on the tier list, Javid Basharat. I think originally people thought he was the better of the Basharat brothers. I think he's worse. I think Farid is considerably better than him. We saw this guy lose to Ayman Zahabi, and I also think that Farid Basharat's win over Taylor Lapulus has aged quite well and is better than any of Basharat's performances where he's just looked mid. Like, the Basharat brothers both kind of look mid always, but, like, Farid Basharat's beaten Damon Blackshear and Taylor Lapulus compared to Javid, who the fuck has he beat? So I think Farid Basharat's considerably better, and I think Javid is just pretty decent, is very mid, to be honest. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. I'm going to move down Rinya Nakamura to a good fighter. I'm going to move up Cheeto and Rob Font, and then I'm going to add in Damon Blackshear to the good fighter category. This is going to involve a lot of shifting around because I'm going to realize that I'm going to need to, I think each tier like spot or like ranking can fit 11 people. So in the end, I'm going to just need to put 11 people at the top tier, even if I don't consider them all like elite. So I'm going to do a lot of moving around. But yeah, Damon Blackshear, I think he's very good. I think he arguably beat Bautista, but then in his last fight against Jackson, he did just get starched in like 10 seconds, so it's kind of tough. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Next up, John Castaneda, decent fighter in my opinion. Calvin Loughran, bad fighter, he's not very good. Chris Gutierrez, he's a good fighter, he's actually got some decent wins. Corey Sandhagen, elite, obviously pretty self-explanatory. Honey Yahya, bad fighter in my opinion, he's not good at all. Bernardo Sopai, He's actually decent, got some decent performances. Raul Rosas, a.k.a. Meep, I'm going to put him in decent. There you go, I just wanted to speed through a couple real quick. Raul Rosas, I'll talk about him for a little bit. It's an interesting placement with Mr. Raul Rosas because he beat, he lost to Rodriguez, who's not bad, but he's beaten bums. Like, he's beaten Jay Perrin and Terrence Mitchell and Ricky Tercios, who none of which are good at all. So it's hard to know where to rank Raul Rosas. But yeah, like other guys that I was talking about, Bernardo Sopai, he actually looked alright against Vinicius Oliveira. Castaneda, he's not terrible. He's had some decent performances. Calvin Loughran, I just can't rate him very highly after losing to Jake Hadley. I wanted to just speed through a couple guys real quick. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Carlos Vera, let's speed through some more. Carlos Vera is not good at all. He's a bum. Ricky Tercios, also a bum. This guy, Simon Oliveira, also a bum. Let's move on, though, to the next fighter. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move up Aldo and Figgy. I'm going to move up Rob Font because I actually think he's pretty fucking good. I'm going to move up Said Nurmagomedov as well, and then I'm going to put in Mario Bautista at very high level. There's a whole lot going on. Don't question it. But Bautista, though, is very good because I think at this stage he would beat Font, and I think Font is a better fighter than Cheeto. That's why I moved him up. But yeah, just ignore all the maneuvering around. Just allow it. That's what we got to do. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Next up on the tier list, Jonathan Martinez, high level. Look, after the Aldo fight, I can't quite put him in like very high level. I don't think he's quite the top of the top. But I do still think Martinez is a very solid guy in the Bantamweight division. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Next up, very high level is Peyton Talbot. Now, he might have only beaten Cameron Simon and Giannis Gamori, who neither of which are that good. But I still think just optically and using the eye test, you can tell that Peyton Talbot is very good at fighting. And I do think he's one of the better strikers at Bantamweight. Like, if I did a top 10 strikers list at Bantamweight, he's probably like around the middle range, probably behind like O'Malley, Yarn, Aldo, some of these guys. I'd probably have him like the number 6 or 7 spot. Maybe I'm tripping and maybe he's going to go out there and lose his next fight to fucking, I don't know, like Hayoni Barcelos, but still, I think Yanez is really good. Talbot's really good. I think I'm going to rank Giannis pretty soon. That's why I was talking about him. But let's move on to the next fighter. Let's go ahead and add Dominic Cruz into high level. I was considering not putting him in the video just because like he hasn't fought in ages, but I think he's called out Cejudo recently. He does still seem to have an appetite to get in the cage. So yeah, I'll put Dominic Cruz in high level. Let's move on though to another fighter. Next up, we got Cameron Saaiman. He's decent. Again, who's Saaiman beat? He beat Steven Kozlo, Mana Martinez, and fucking Terrence Mitchell. None of those people are good. And then he got fucking assaulted by Peyton Talbot, and he hasn't fought since. So yeah, Saaiman, looking to see when he's going to get back in the cage. But for now, he's just a sloppy version of Dricus. He looks like Dricus if Dricus didn't have muscle and wasn't effective at doing what he does. Because at bantamweight, you actually have to be technical. Middleweight is a shit weight class, so you can get away with being Dricus. And also, Dricus has a chin, and Saaiman doesn't, clearly. But let's move on, though, to another fighter. Next up, Ricky Simone. I mean, he lost recently to Oliveira, and he lost to Bautista, and he lost to Song Yadong. So this guy's actually on a 3-fight loss streak. But still, I think he's pretty solid. I think he's still a good fighter. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Next up on the tier list, we've got Vinicius Oliveira. Now, he did beat Ricky Simone, and he looked pretty fucking good doing it. Now, I think people didn't rate him very highly after his debut because he was a bit hyped up on Contender Series. He got a big KO, comes in against Sopai, looks kind of mid in the first 2 rounds, gets taken down a bit, and then KO'd him in the third with a highlight reel finish. But I picked him against Ricky Simone as like a plus 200 underdog. That was one of my best picks of the year, to be honest. So I was happy with that. But yeah, Vinicius Oliveira, I think he's very good. I think he's very high level. He's got great power. He's got good movement, all of that. And I think he's a very good fighter. So I'll put him in that tier as such. But let's move on, though, to another fighter. Back down to the bottom tier, we got this guy. I think his name is Luan Lacerda. If I'm not mistaken, he lost to, I believe it's Damon Blackshear. From memory, if I remember that fight correctly, it was on the Albazi vs. Cara France card, and I think he just kept going for fucking leg locks and got ground and pounded and lost by TKO to Damon Blackshear. I don't know what else he's done in his career, but I just remember that as his most recent fight. I think he might even be cut, I'm not sure. But let's move on, though, to another fighter. Next up on the tier list, we got Jin Matsumoto or Matsumoto or something. I don't know. I think he's pretty good. He looked solid in his debut against Dan Argueta, who's a pretty decent fighter. Yeah, but he's young as well. This guy's like 24, so I think he's got a high future. He's got good potential, good prospects. So yeah, I think Jin Matsumoto is very good. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Next up on the tier list, we've got Cleiston Rodriguez. He got subbed in the first by Farid Basharat. He KO'd Shannon Ross with a spinning butt kick, or spinning ass to the face. But apart from that, I don't think he's very good. I think he lost to Alatung Haley as well, I believe. Or maybe he beat him, I'm not sure. But I know he fought Alatung Haley. I think he lost that fight. I think he got out-wrestled from memory. But yeah, I don't think Clayton Rodriguez is very good. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Next up on the tier list, Song Yadong. I think he's still an elite bantamweight. He's only lost to the best, in my opinion. Peter Yan, Corey Sandhagen. I know he's got other losses on his record, I think, but like still, at this stage, bro, he's also 26. Song Yadong's got crazy levels of experience. I'd be surprised if this guy doesn't fight for a belt one day. He's going to outlast half the guys in the division. Like, he's younger than O'Malley. He's going to outlast, like, the Marab of the division. He's going to outlast, like, Sandhagen. Like, Umar's the only guy that's going to, like, still be there in, like, 6 years when Song Yadong's going to be 32 in 6 years' time. Like, that's kind of nuts. But I still think he's a very elite fighter. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Another guy. Next up, we got this bum, Ronnie Lawrence. I think he was going to lose to Dan Argueta. He was literally about to get submitted in, like, the first round, and then they stopped it due to a fucking, because he thought he tapped when he didn't or something, or he thought he went out or some shit like that, and it was a no contest. Yeah, Ronnie Lawrence is shit. Let's move on to another fighter. Next up on the tier list, we've got Brad Katona. I would have put him higher, but then I remembered that he lost to Garrett Armfield. So I can't put him above Garrett Armfield, so I'm going to have him in decent for now. Yeah, he's alright. I mean, he looks good at moments, and then in other moments he looks shit, but he's okay. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Next up on the tier list, we've got, I think this Brady Highstand, I believe. He's solid. He beat Armfield. He actually looks pretty good. He was close to getting finished at one point. But yeah, he looks solid. Brady Highstand's not a bad fighter. Let's move on to another guy. Next up, we got Chang Ho Lee coming off road to the UFC, yet to actually fight a UFC fighter. I'll put him in here, though. He's alright. I mean, he's not good. Like, I'll put him in bad in comparison, because I just don't think he's that good, but yeah, whatever. Let's move on to another fighter. Okay, next up, we're doing some more maneuvering. I think I'm going to take Phillips and Cejudo up to the top tier. What have I changed? I think I moved Montel Jackson up. I think I moved Martinez up. I've done some other shit. I don't know if I added someone, but I think I just moved everyone. So yeah, this is what the tier list looks like now. You can figure out what I changed. I don't know what I was doing. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Next up on the tier list, I'm adding Marcus McGee to the high-level tier. Now, I don't think he's that amazingly technical, and he hasn't really beaten anyone good. Like, he beat JP Buys. Congratulations. Gaston Bolaños, congratulations. But he's doing it effectively, and he's got a fight booked now with Jonathan Martinez for the MSG card, which is going to be a banger. He might lose, but he also might just be too physical and too powerful and win. So I'm not sure, but I do think this guy could still beat a few top guys at bantamweight. Not like top guys, but like top 20 guys I think he could win against. So yeah, I think Marcus McGee's pretty solid. Fucking ugly motherfucker though as well. Vanderlei Silva looking ass guy. Let's move on though to another fighter. Next up on the tier list, we got Pedro Munoz. I'm going to put him in high level, and I'm going to move, I think, Gutierrez down to good fighter. Just because, Munoz did beat Gutierrez, so yeah, I don't know, and Gutierrez is kind of mid. Like, he KO'd Edgar, but, like, Edgar kind of sucked at that point, so yeah, I don't know. But yeah, Munoz is alright. He loses a lot, but he's not bad. It's like the Magny of bantamweight. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Next up on the tier list, Adrian Yanez, good fighter. I don't know, he's not, last year, or before the Rob Font fight, people probably thought he was, elite, but, nah, in hindsight, he's kind of mid. Got leg kick TKO'd by Martinez, got KO'd by Font. I don't know, Yanez isn't that good. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Next up, we got Ayman Zahabi. I'll put him in good fighter. He beat Javid Bashrat, who I still don't consider that good, but still, Zahabi's not bad. I think he's got a fight booked against someone, I want to say, on the Canada card, I'm guessing. Not sure, but I'm pretty sure he's got a fight booked. But yeah, Zahabi's not too bad. Ariel Helwani, fucking looking dude. Which is not a compliment. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. I'm doing another fucking switch up. Ignore this. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm moving a bunch of guys up to very high level. Yeah, you guys can fucking figure that out. Who did I add? I don't even know. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Next up, I'm adding Cody Garbrandt to high level. Even though he loses, he's only really lost to good fighters so far, like Figueiredo, Rob Font, TJ Dillashaw, Kai Kara France, and who else did he lose to? Someone. He lost to one other person, I think. But yeah, Garbrandt, he hasn't really beaten anyone good recently, but he also hasn't lost to anyone bad. So yeah, he's not too bad. Garbrandt is still alright. He just has no chin. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Okay, I think I am... What am I doing? I'm moving some guys up, I think. I moved Rosas Basharat up. I'm adding in Victor Henry to the good fighter tier. I don't know what else I'm doing, but yeah, it's cool. Victor Henry is solid. If that's the guy I'm adding, if that's who I'm meant to be talking about, yeah, Victor Henry's a good fighter. He's not that good, but he's okay. Let's move on, though, to the next fighter. I'm moving Brian Kelleher down to the bum tier. I'm going to add Aori Trilang into the bad fighter tier. Yeah, Aori Trilang's not very good, and Brian Kelleher's worse than I originally said he was. So that's the justification for that. Let's move on, though, to the next fighter. Okay, I'm going to move Douglas Silva de Andrade up to decent, and then I'm adding Cody Stamann into decent, because I consider Stamann decent, and I just checked his record, and I remembered that Stamann did actually lose to Andrade. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do there in terms of some switch-ups. But let's move on to another fighter. And now I'm going to add in Miles Johns to the decent fighter tier. He did beat Andrade, but I don't think he's considerably better than Andrade to put him in a completely separate tier. So yeah, that's my justification for that. I mean, fuck do you want? You didn't come to this video for Douglas Silva de Andrade versus Miles Johns, who's better debates. That's not what you're here for. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Next up, I'm going to add Alatung Hailey into the bad fighter tier. I don't think he's very good. He beat Clayton Rodriguez, but still, Alatung Hailey is not very good as a fighter. Let's move on, though, to another guy. Another big fucking switch. Don't question it. I'm not even going to go through what I changed. I just changed some stuff, so yeah. You guys can figure that out for yourself. Let's move on, though, to the next fighter. Okay, I think I am adding Gafarov and Kyung Ho Kang to the good fighter tier, and then I'm putting Christian Quinones in the decent fighter tier, because I think he lost to both of them. So yeah, I think that's what I'm doing. still trying to kind of make sense of all of this. Let's move on though to the next fighter. Next up, we got Dan Argueta. I'll put him in the good fighter category. He's got some decent wins. A lot of no contests, I think. He's got back-to-back like no contests, which I think he won both of the fights, but one of them got overturned because of, I think he popped, and then one of them was like one of them was the early stoppage with the submission thing. So yeah, Dan Argueta's not bad. Let's move on though to the next fighter. Next up, we got, what am I doing? I think I'm adding Daniel Santos into the good fighter tier. I think I switched some other shit up, but yeah, Daniel Santos is a pretty good fighter. He beat John Castaneda, so I got to put him above Castaneda. Did I move Castaneda back down? I think I did. Yeah. Let's move on though to the next guy. Okay, I just realized I moved Castaneda down, but I didn't move fucking Gafarov and Kang down, so that's a mistake. So think about it in your head. Gafarov and Kang should both be in decent fighter. Castaneda should stay in good because he beat both of them, but I realized that he got finished by Santos, so I moved him down. But the last guy is Ramon Tavares, who is, I'll put him in bad. I don't know, he's not very good. But yeah, that's the video done, guys. Fucking absolute mess. I kept switching random shit up and just making a mess on the screen, so it is what it is. That's every single bantamweight though ranked in the UFC. Let me know if you agree with my rankings or not. This is not an exact order, but yeah, this is fucking 77 bantamweights. I think I missed Felipe Lima because he didn't actually fight at bantamweight, but he's very good. But yeah, like, subscribe, follow my Instagram, all that, and see you guys in the next one. Peace out.